get down to business. All right, what we're going to do today, would you go ahead and hit the lights for me, please? I appreciate it. Yes, Tony. Cool. All right, what we're going to do today, we are starting the second unit. We are starting the second paper. That's still kind of hot. That was a mistake. All right. Everything we're looking at is on Coursed-In if you want to follow along there as opposed to the screen. Again, second unit, so no longer literary analysis, right? When you're over on this side, you go down to informative synthesis is the name of this paper, so that's the name of the unit. This prompt, today is all about just mostly talking about the paper. It's a little bit different from what we just worked on. We're going to use a lot of the same skills, but we're going to apply them in a slightly different way. Yeah, we'll get right into it. All right, so source text, I'm holding it. Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-5. I'll show it to the screen. It's dark, so they can't see it. Anyway, very famous book, published in 1969. It's everywhere. I tried to tell you guys before, you can get it used. You can get it a lot of places. If you haven't done that already, you kind of just get it wherever you can. I will say, in past semesters, people have found a PDF of it online. Has anybody gone looking for that yet? Okay. Because I know, don't tell me, but I know some of you at least don't have the book yet, which is a mistake. But I'm pretty sure there's still a PDF of this somewhere online that is free. And I will tell you, I think the book is better in terms of like just having it and navigating it and all that. But in the meantime, if you don't have the book, you can go out hunting for the PDF. If anybody finds that, by the way, send me an email and I'll send that to the class, the PDF of it. But the point is, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-5 is our source text, along with a secondary source I've provided that's on Coursed-In. We don't have to read it for a couple weeks, but it's there. We'll talk about it when we get to it, okay? It's by a woman named Christina Jarvis, okay? But we'll get there when we get there. And at least two more of your choosing. More on that in a second. Length, at least 4 pages, not counting the works cited. I know you guys freak out about the length. When I tell you what the paper is, though, I promise you, 90% of the time, length is not an issue for students with this paper, okay? Percentage of your grade is 25%. Format is the same as it always is. It's MLA, as we noted just before class. Hi there. March 16th, final draft is due. So we got a minute on this paper, okay? The reason for that, scroll down a little bit. I'm going to talk about what the assignment is, but I'm first going to describe what this unit is going to look like. I kind of talked about it in 2 phases, okay? We got to read first. We're going to read a book. We're going to read an article. You're going to have 2 articles you find yourselves. You're going to have to read those, okay? You got a lot of reading to do first. First half of this unit is that. Second half is we're going to write about those things and get the paper going. So that's why we have that length of time. Over a month, right? What is the paper? We're going to practice it here in a couple minutes, but basically, an informative synthesis, one way I describe it, it's like a glorified book report. For most of you, if in high school you ever had to write like a research paper, it was probably actually something more like this, which is, in our previous paper, I wanted you guys to pose arguments about a poem, right? In this paper, you're going to make different authors' arguments speak to one another, okay? So sometimes authors will agree, disagree. Sometimes they'll modify each other's arguments when you put them side by side. But again, it's the name of the game in this paper is organizing other people's ideas, is pulling out pertinent information and highlighting details. And what does that mean when you consider the connotation of whatever this guy said as opposed to what this person said, right? Like, that's how this paper works. And if that doesn't quite make sense, hopefully it will here in a minute when I have an example we're going to look at. There's some source requirements here. We'll talk about that later. I have a research crash course. You're going to be excited about it. But basically, again, I'm going to give you 2 sources. One of them is the book. Another one is Christina Jarvis. The other 2 sources that are required for this paper, you will find yourselves, okay? And I will tell you how to do that, but so you don't have to worry about it too much just now, but that will happen, okay? Organization. There are 2 primary modes of organizing this paper, as I mentioned a moment ago, really half the battle this time is just organizing. Most of you will want to do this first one, which is summarize your first source, summarize your second source. You get it, it's a pattern. I do not teach it this way, and I strongly discourage you writing your paper, building your paper this way. The reason is because the name of the game in this paper is getting these sources talking to each other, right? If you silo each one off into a paragraph on its own, the only real work you can do is when you transition between those paragraphs. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but it's hard to do well. I've seen it done well, but I'm telling you, more often than not, that's not the case. So the way I teach the paper, and we're gonna do it for a month here, the way I talk to you about it is this way. You summarize a topic or an idea. You summarize a different topic or an idea. Doing it this way, you may bring in 2 or 3 different authors in this paragraph. You may bring in 2 or 3 different authors in this paragraph. And all of a sudden, if only because of proximity, they have to talk to each other, right? Because you're putting them next to each other. You're putting them into conversation. So we're going to try it this way. Any questions at this stage? Because I don't know if I'm making complete sense right now. So. Great. Okay. What we're going to do now, we're going to practice a little bit of informative synthesis. Basically, we're going to watch a video. It is 20 minutes long, okay? I happen to think it's somewhat entertaining. You may disagree with that. You'll be okay. You can make it to 20 minutes. It's from a show called Last Week Tonight. And it's a couple years old. I'll let you know. He is taking on the debate about whether or not college athletes should be paid, okay? And I tell you it's a couple years old because some of this is out of date. You know, some things have changed. Some things have not, by the way. But that's not the reason we're using this. The reason we're using this, frankly, is I have not found a better video that does this. What he's going to do in this video, he's very clearly on the side that college athletes should be paid, right? He's upfront about that. Most of his arguments are in that vein. But he is going to periodically give you the NCAA's argument to counter that. All I want you to do while you watch the video, other than stay awake, is jot down, like the way I do it as we watch too. I don't know why I'm going to show you this like you can see it. I just make like NCAA and then money, and I do like a T, right? And on this side, this is all the stuff, all the ideas, all the arguments the NCAA has, all the arguments that John Oliver is his name, makes on why they should be paid. Just jot that stuff down when you see it. When we're done with the video, we're going to do that up on the board, and then we're going to practice a little bit of informative synthesis. Again, the whole idea of today is just making sense out of that prompt. We'll see what we can do. All right. Can you get the light source, please? I appreciate it. I told you you made it. I think most of you did. I appreciate it. Okay. Now what I want to do. We'll do this as a class, provided one of my markers has some juice. Let's see. Yeah, that's good enough. All I want to do right now, I spoke too soon there. On either side, any arguments either for student athletes being paid or not. Any at all.
The NCAA, they're not employees, they're students.
One more time, sorry.
And for the NCAA side, they're not employees, they're students.
They keep coming back to that phrase. Student athletes, right? At one point he tells you, they specifically coined that term. It's like, yeah, they're athletes, but before that, they're students, right? They'd be like, they're paying you guys to come to class, right? Nobody does that. Yeah, good. What else?
Only paid through education.
They get paid in an education. They get paid, right? You guys feel fulfilled right now, right? Don't answer that. Yeah.
They can't afford to pay them. Schools can.
It's basically they're non-profit. And to be clear, the schools they're talking about in the video are like Division I, top of the line, your Alabamas, your Georgias, stuff like that, that pretend like they don't make any money when they're paying Nick Saban $8 million a year. It's like one of these things doesn't make sense, you know. Type of. And to that point, he kind of implies an argument from this side, right? Which is, well, no, he's pretty blatant about it actually, but they kind of call that nonprofit status into question. Like, I'm not sure that's legit. Other ideas, maybe from this side of the room.
On the money side,
Yeah.
they spend money on unnecessary things to cover up for the money they make.
We can fold that in here. Here, rather. Very good. Yeah, we'll make that part of that idea there. Good, for sure. Other ideas? I just want to fill up this list real quick.
No favoritism.
What do you mean?
He was explaining in the video how that one person, you know, getting paid and stuff, and they were saying that they shouldn't do that because if so, then everybody would have to get paid.
Before lunch, like he got lunch before getting on the plane, and then they said.
Oh, yeah, we can fold that into here too. Again, because, yeah, what you guys are highlighting, again, is he covers this part really fast and kind of offhand. But when they made this term, like when they invented it, they purposely like put that at the front, right? Because again, it's saying, well, he didn't buy lunch for other students. He didn't. Yeah, and so anything that you would or would not give a student gets applied to student athletes. For sure, yeah.
On the money side, they're getting paid in a paper education.
I would list it over here as education with another question mark. There's paper classes is what you're talking about, which sometimes people are unclear on what that means. That's a class that only exists on paper. They never went to that. That class did not exist. It's just a grade, and some of you are like, that sounds pretty sweet. But if they're saying you get paid in that, and then your classes are made up at some point.
Is that not illegal?
Yeah, it's illegal as shit, man. Yeah. That's why they had that old white lady talking about it. That's what that, yeah, it's illegal. Yes?
For the money side, could you put, like their schedule, how they're like always constantly?
Richard Sherman makes a great point about, it's weird because it's part of this a little bit too, right? His whole point is like, how are you going to pretend that you could like do homework or learn it, right? When you're, but we can make it its own thing too, I suppose. Talk about their schedule.
The schedule doesn't just go in with education, it's everything else, because it's also like meetings as well.
Well, no, I mean, I was going to add to that, like it's also, suppose the schedule Sherman outlines there, you're not going to get a job on top of that. Like and as Shabazz Napier was talking about, you know, he has no food. It's like, yeah, how's he going to go buy food? Like anyway, precisely. So, cool. What else? Yeah.
Small percentage goes pro.
We can put that on because he raises it for this side, which is, you know, sort of go pro with an exclamation mark. Over here, of course, it'd be a question mark. He gives you those percentages, pretty low. Yeah. Okay. What else? We got a couple more. What's up? Sorry.
Healthcare.
Workers' comp.
Which side?
They don't want to pay more workers' comp.
Okay, yeah. Well, we can short it. We just say injury, right?
You lose your whole scholarship.
Which is fucked up, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get hurt doing the thing, and they're like,
See you later.
I wouldn't have been hurt if I wasn't. Anyway, that one particularly is like, damn, dude.
Really shitty coaches.
Well,
They're screamed at by coaches, yeah.
so mentors we put over here,
And mentors.
and yeah, kind of call that. And again, to be clear, that's not every coach. Although I grew up playing football, my dad was my coach a lot of those years. It was a lot of. It felt like I was back at home, you know, like I don't know. That's super atypical, actually. You know, so anyway. Yeah, we got those. What else? Oh yes.
The NCAA get like even after players done, they get paid because the games or the athletes.
Experience.
Well, no, what he's talking. I appreciate the tone you hit there. You're talking about licensing, and I'm not confident I spelled that right. My head is very fuzzy. But that was Ed O'Bannon, right? They used him, like his face, the whole name, image, likeness that only just came around past like 2 years, was for guys like Ed O'Bannon, who's like, dude, that's me. You're gonna take me, and you're not gonna pay or even ask like, the licensing, and we could maybe say slash advertisements that he covers at the very top of the video, right? All the money they're pulling in that way.
$1 billion ad revenue.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, NCAA tournament, how many games is that? That's a ridiculous, that's 80 games or something, but still, a lot of money. Anything else? That's most of them.
Can we talk about the losses are by design thing?
Do I know?
The losses are by design thing.
Yeah, with the the nonprofit.
Okay.
How about, there's a couple more. It would kind of go with that, but they mention it on its own. The coaches have all these opportunities to make money, which of course is kind of galling when the students don't. Like Todd Gurley a bunch of years ago got in trouble for signing autographs. And it's like, you realize that man's in trouble because people wanted to pay him for writing his name for things that he does. And it's like, yeah, no, you can't do that. Well, but they're not in, they just want to play. Anyway, I like this one. Not least of which because I think Dad looks when he's a tool, but he talks about entitlement. Were you guys clear on the point he was trying to make there when he was saying why student athletes shouldn't be paid? He said there's enough entitlement in the world. What does he mean when he says that?
He's saying so they get the opportunity to get paid. Should we be thankful for that? Or?
Well, kind of, but he's saying they feel like they're entitled to more. They feel like they're entitled to being paid, right? Which again, I think in most cases people would say, yeah. Yeah. There was one more. We've kind of danced all around this one, but I like to list it on its own. Speaking back to Shabazz Napier, that marker is very dead. Talking about those hungry nights, or the kid that gets put on the plane when one of his parents has died, so the coach takes him to lunch first, right? Just human need, like these are human beings, you know? And like you need stuff. And real talk, this is America. One of those needs is money, actually. Just to make your life work, you kind of need money. So, all right. There may be a couple we left out, but I think this is pretty solid, actually. Now, what we're going to do, just for a couple minutes, I want you to humor me. We're going to try to connect ideas across this dividing line, okay? How's this guy work? Oh, my goodness, okay. Spoiled with a new marker. So you'll see what I mean as soon as we do the first one. But can anybody help us make a connection between something on this side and something on this side? Because these are two different texts, right? This is one text making all these arguments. This is the other text. But where can we relate any of these? Yeah?
Education and injury, they lose their scholarship if they get injured.
Okay. So here and here, they lose the ability, the opportunity to get that education as a result of that injury. Yeah. Could we now go anywhere from either here or here? Could we make another connection?
Can you use like the same ones? Can I use an education for another thing?
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
I mean, like, can you use?
I mean, it's not wrong.
Schedule?
Yeah, I was gonna say like education and schedule.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know if you could use education more than once or not.
Yeah. So look, already what we started to do, and look, this is rough drafting. This is the sort of thing you would do before you ever wrote a word, right? You're trying to say you had two texts for your paper, which you will, and you got their main ideas, their main arguments kind of laid out in your notes. And you're like, how am I gonna? You just start making connections. Over here, the super available connection is over here, right? With paper classes and all that. You're like, that's not an education. But even if you don't spend a lot of time on that, you also have Richard Sherman talking about the schedule. You have, God forbid, you get hurt and you lose your scholarship, get basically kicked out of school. All of that could be tied into a body paragraph that starts with the NCAA saying these kids get paid in an education. And from there, you start a discussion, right? These are all smaller parts of that larger discussion. You see what I'm saying? That would be one body paragraph in this paper, which, to be clear, we are not writing on this. Somebody always gets this wrong. We're not writing about this. Please don't do that. Okay. Let's do at least one more. So forget about that. What's up?
Mentors and coaches.
Here and here? Or here?
Mentors mentors and coaches.
Okay, coaches getting paid, how so?
The coaches are supposed to be the mentors, but they're not doing the same amount of work even as the actual students.
I mean, no, they are, well, most of them probably are working, right? But they're getting compensated to a much higher degree, I suppose. Is that kind of what you're? Yeah. Well, I'll help you out a little bit. I think we'd have to also talk about the throwing basketballs at kids and the language I can't use. I'll say fuck all day, but some of those other words we probably can't throw around. Okay. Can we connect either one of these or this one to anything else? Again, we're just trying to branch out a little bit, see if we can build that idea out, that discussion.
Compliment to the coaches.
How so?
They feel like they're entitled to the money that they are owed, really, because they're not doing the effort. They're just, what was showed was them just scrutiny.
Well, and again, I mean, we can't pretend like the only thing we see in the video is all that happens, right? So, I mean, coaches do work hard. At the very least, a guy like Davin Swinney, who, to be clear, I think is a complete tool, worked his way up. He put in the time, like he made his way to the job that he has. Even Nick Saban, I don't know how anybody feels about that guy, has been coaching for like 40 fucking years. Like he's put the time in, the work in. What you're kind of implying is a larger conversation about like our priorities as a society. Like you have coaches making $8 million a year, you have school teachers who can barely afford rent. That's a bigger.
A little bit.
Yeah. I'm like, look, I'm with you there, but that's not quite. Anyway.
And I mean, they can at least get a little bit.
You would think, yeah, but here again, if you were the guy, and then I'll come to you guys. But if you were the guy who was like, you're gonna pay me $8 million to do what? Fuck those school teachers, right? Like, I get it too. All that is to say. Anyway, okay. I told you I'm fuzzy. I think your hand was up first, and then we'll come to you.
Entitlement and human needs.
Oh, that's what you said. Yeah. She said entitlement. We'll connect it here, and then you want to go to there. How so?
Because they feel like they would feel entitled to have the money, like they feel entitled to that, but they need money to have basic human needs.
It's what that money is for. Yeah, and again, you could easily go to Shabazz Napier. This is going to date me a little bit. If anybody's heard of Arian Foster, it came out when he was in the NFL. He had an assistant coach who once a month would bring him a trash bag of frozen burritos, and that's how he got through school. Because he has no money. You have to eat, not least of which you're a fucking athlete. Like you're burning all those calories. No food. So the assistant coach on the down low would be like, hey man, here's $50 worth of burritos, like better than nothing. But yeah, the question is, what do they really feel entitled to? Money, yes, but as I've already covered, this is America. What is that money really for? In a lot of cases, you could argue just to live. What was your idea?
I was going to say licensing and ads to human needs, because if
Okay.
they were able to be paid or whatnot for their work that they put in,
Yeah.
then they could get money for their needs.
Oh, so to phrase it a slightly different way, but yeah, similar wavelength, like the fact that these folks are making all this money, it almost feels shameful that people would go hungry, that those people making that possible would starve. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yes.
Could you connect licensing and ads to the coaches making money?
You could. How so?
I don't know.
You're asking me. Okay. Well, I mean, part of how they're getting paid is from that. I mean, again, it's the idea. I guess what you could do, what you're kind of after, is this whole bubble, this giant sack of money, is only certain people are allowed access to it. And again, the question is, well, the people who inarguably are making this more possible than anyone, like coaches play a role. Some teams would be complete dog shit without a coach, right? Like that, yeah. But be a weird game with no athletes on the field. Yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, you could make that connection, I think. Okay, so what have we done? Again, this one was a little more free-ranging, but this is just figuring it out. This is just sorting it out. This is notes, right? This is the start to perhaps another body paragraph. And you just got to see where it goes. Not all ideas at first blush are going to make as much sense as others. Maybe we wouldn't roll with all these. Maybe we would make slightly different connect. That's fine. You just figure that out. But you organize the information you start the conversation in each paragraph, right? And you build that first one, and then chances are very good wherever that first paragraph ends up is going to help you figure out how to start the second one, and you do the same kind of operation. The other point I want to make to you, this is only 2 texts. The paper you're going to write here in some weeks, again, we got time, you're going to have 2 more texts lined up next to this. You're going to have way more options, okay? So when I said 4 pages, usually people don't struggle with that. I meant that. You're going to have a wealth of options to choose from in this way. But this is, honestly, this is where the paper starts. It's just setting out each text, big ideas they cover, and making those connections, okay? Does that make enough sense? All right. What we're going to do here for the next little bit, we're going to talk about Vonnegut. I already know. Please don't raise your hands. I already know most, if not all, of you have not done the reading. Is it a bummer? Yes. Is that reality? Often. It's my hope, and again, don't call yourselves out, it's my hope some of you at least have started the book. We're going to find that out real quick. But all you had assigned to you for today is the first 2 chapters, okay? Mainly all I want to do with the last little bit of class, whether you've read it or not, I want to tell you a little bit about the book so that the rest of it, if you have started it, makes sense. Because many of you will read this book and wonder what the hell is wrong with me.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused.
Okay. That's okay.
Like time travel and aliens. And
That's okay. It is bananas. But I in a good way, I would counter, okay? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. And if you have questions as we're talking, by all means, bring them up, okay? But for the last little bit of class, I just want to say, here's kind of how the book starts. Here's some shit you're going to encounter where you're going to go, what? And yeah.
So in chapter 2, they brought up a dude named Pilgrim, right?
Yeah.
Is that the dude in the first chapter as well?
Let's start there. All right. So part of what I like to do with the first day is just here's some of the characters you encounter because it can be a struggle given how the book is written. I'm going to list them. All right. Billy, last name Pilgrim, is by all accounts the main character. Okay. He has a buddy named Weary. Who else do we run into in the first 2 chapters?
O'Hare.
O'Hare in the first chapter. Good. His wife. Do you remember her name? Mary. Very good. And there's one other character who is unnamed. And that is the narrator. And it is not Billy. And this is a very important point. I think that's everybody, though, in the first 2 chapters. All the major players, anyway. All right. So the narrator, his whole thing in chapter 1 is first of all, you're going to be tempted to call him Vonnegut because he basically is. A little bit of backstory. This book is about World War II, and it's about real shit Vonnegut saw. All right. He was at the Battle of the Bulge. He was taken prisoner. He saw the bombing of Dresden, which is how the book ends. He saw horrific stuff. And when he got back, as he tells you in the first chapter, he was like, I have to write about that. I have to. He was already an author. He's like, I have to make that into something, right? For reasons that we're going to talk about as we go. But, as you've already pointed out in your line of questioning, not everything in the book is strictly true. Right? Mostly the aliens and things like that. So it would stand to reason that the narrator, while very close to Vonnegut, isn't necessarily Vonnegut himself, right? So I refer to him as Vonnegut adjacent. All that is to say, in the same way we call Fairchild the speaker, a lot of the time in those poems, you get the sense this is probably the author, right, for the most part. But you can't ever prove that 100%, so we call it the speaker. Same thing here, call it the narrator. He's a character in the book, though. He is the main character in the first chapter. He's a guy who wants to write a book. He goes and talks to an old war buddy. I'll go ahead and put that up here. Why does he want to talk to O'Hare?
He doesn't remember too much from the war, so he wanted to go kind of like jog his memory.
He's having trouble. Like he remembers stuff, but it's not always great. And he tells you he's tried to write a bunch and he's thrown a bunch out. He just can't get it right. He doesn't know. It's almost in a way kind of what we were doing. Like he's always talking about organizing it and making it like.
Yeah, fuck up their wallpaper.
Yeah, no, like really interesting. But he just can't make it happen. He's like, you know what? I'll go talk to my old war buddy. He was there too. He'll help me sort some of this out. What's the problem when he goes and talks to him?
His wife hates him.
Mary hates him, and we'll talk about her in a minute. But even before that, O'Hare has a problem.
He doesn't remember either.
He says he doesn't, which is interesting to me. This is one of those parts you got to read between the lines a little bit. Do you take O'Hare at his word that he doesn't remember his time in World War II?
I think it said it gave off the vibe he just didn't want to talk about it.
Absolutely. Dude, he remembers it. World War II, like, I don't know. Was it Thursday? Right? No, like, but he doesn't want to talk about it. That's telling, right? That's important. Let's put a big old note over here. And that's most of chapter 1. Mary, for her part, because she's a part of that too, why does she hate the narrator?
It said that he was scared he was going to glorify war in the book.
Yeah. The way I sum her up here in the first chapter, she calls the narrator out. She's a bit of a moral compass, right? She kind of checks the narrator. She says, you're just going to take whatever my husband lived through, whatever horrors he doesn't want to talk about, right? You're going to take that, you're going to make it into a movie. People are going to go eat popcorn and watch him murder folks, and he's going to smile at the end. That's garbage, right? She's furious. And the narrator's like, that's absolutely not what I'm going to do. He actually does this. He's like, I won't do it, I promise, type thing. And that's kind of her function in the first chapter. Now, what's interesting, I keep saying that's the first chapter. There's only 10 in the book. 2 through 9 is the actual story. Chapters 1 and 10 are a frame. So we'll see the narrator and kind of O'Hare a little bit throughout the book, but they're off to the side after chapter 1. Starting in chapter 1, we meet the real main character. That's Billy Pilgrim. Billy, the best word I can think to describe him. You laughing? What was that?
Oh, no.
Okay. He's truly apathetic. Like in a way, the best way I can think to describe it, at one point, I think it's in chapter 2, I believe it is. He's being chased. He's behind enemy lines in Nazi Germany in chapter 2. Not a great place to be, right? For anybody. But at one point, he leans against a tree and just wishes he could turn into steam.
Yeah.
That's Billy, to a T. All through the book is just, hey man, we gotta, or you should, whoa. And he's like, I don't want to. The whole time. That's Billy, okay? You'll see what I mean. But that is the one word I would use to describe him. There's other things we could talk about, but it's kind of hard with just one chapter. But this is him for sure. We'll talk a lot more about Weary next time, but I'm curious if anybody has a little bit of a beat on him.
He's a fucking weirdo.
He is. Do you remember? There's one thing in particular that
All
really.
the torture instruments and stuff.
Well, his big hobby. You know, you have hobbies, you have loves, things that you're into. He's into torture.
And he also likes hanging out with whatever weirder than him, and he beats them up.
He likes to hang out with people that other people don't like, so he can beat them up.
Yeah.
But it tells you in the book, and
It's
we'll
kind
talk.
of like an attraction thing. It was weird.
We'll talk more about him next time. But it gives you a little bit of his backstory, which is interesting, because you also get the distinct impression that he's not very well liked either, which is interesting. But he doesn't sound like an awesome guy. We even give him the last name Weary, which is to suggest that he's tiresome, right? Yeah. All right. So there's some minor characters. Those are the major characters you encounter in the first 2 chapters. It's not a huge list after that. There's going to be a couple more people, But for the most part, you're riding with Billy for damn near the entire book. And again, in chapter 10, it's going to be these two guys again. That's going to be it. Okay? The other things I want you to know about the book. One way I describe it to students, it feels a lot like if you've ever had your grandfather tell you a long story. And the way it's like really conversational, but also it bounces around a lot. Like we will be in World War II at one point, and then out of nowhere, we'll be in Billy's childhood when he was learning to swim or something. Like it's just all over the place. There's reasons for that. We got to read more of the book before we can talk about it, but I want you to be prepared for that. Sometimes students can get a little confused by that movement, okay? That is okay, but I kind of feel like it helps you to know about it ahead of time. There's different approaches you can take with that. I've heard of students in the past, sort of like I know people will do this, like students will do this with Shakespeare sometimes, just because he writes like a person that's been dead for a long time, because he has. Where you read it, but then next to you, you'll have like a summary or something. So if you ever get lost, you can refer to that and go, what the fuck is that? Oh yeah, that's where's the, you can try that. What I would not suggest is only reading a summary, which is something that some of you will do. That's gonna make the paper harder. I'm just letting you know. You're gonna need to read the book, or at least huge chunks of it, to write the paper. So I'm being upfront with you. But if having a summary open next to you, like on another screen or whatever, that you can refer to occasionally, that could help. Beyond that, I kind of hate that you ruined it, but that's okay. It's okay. I did ask for questions, and you asked a good one. There are aliens in the book. You know, you all learned about World War II. You remember the aliens? Mm-hmm. Kurt Vonnegut was a famous science fiction writer. So that's gonna come up. And again, I think there's reasons for that we also have to read a lot more of the book before we talk about it. But just know that if at any point you're reading the book and you're like, that doesn't seem like something we talked about in social studies, it's probably bullshit. But that's okay. That, again, I'm telling you, I think that's part of why the book is great. I think it's the good kind of insane, okay? That's good for you, occasionally, I think. I think that's all I wanted to say. My throat's about ready to give up. Did anybody have any other questions for me, either about the paper or the book or any of that? As we start packing. Okay. For next time. Oh, I have so many things. Hold on. Okay. For next time, it's just Vonnegut. This next maybe 2 weeks, double check the syllabus, is really just reading Vonnegut. Okay? So if you haven't read through chapter 2 for today, I imagine it's probably most of you, that's okay. You can get caught up. All right, for next time, I want you to read through chapter 4. And I don't know off the top of the head how many pages that is. As soon as you look, you guys are going to be upset with me. But honest to God, I mentioned this before class, it bores me to tears taking 2 weeks to read this book. You guys break my heart. It's a little over 100 pages. The end of chapter, you laugh. This conversational, reading super quick book, you laugh at 100 pages. And how many days? 4 days now? Is that accurate? Is it 4 days? 25 pages a day. Ugh. That's my not great way of saying you can all do it. 25 pages a day. Take you an hour a day. You can do it. That's if you're reading slow. All right, otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.